Welcome back to NEMO Fishing, and this is episode 2 of 2019. I want to talk about one of my favorite fish, actually my favorite fish, the smallmouth bass, and I'm specifically talking about stream smallmouth in the Ozarks because that's where I mainly catch our smallmouth bass. So let's talk about smallmouth bass. The scientific name is the Micropterus dolomieu, and other common names are brown bass or brownie or bronzeback. They're not a huge fish. They go, average size 10 to 20 inches, but anything over 15 inches is a good size smallmouth in Missouri. I think the maximum size is about 22 inches long and probably 6 pounds or so. But they are predominantly located in Ozark streams and rivers and in some reservoirs in the Ozarks. Some in the upper Mississippi River and the tributaries there. But they thrive in clear streams with gravel bottoms. They eat things like fish, crayfish or crawdads, helgamites, aquatic insects, and just about anything they can get their lips around. And they're active in the rivers all the time, but most active, of course, around dawn and dusk. How can you tell the difference between a smallmouth bass and a largemouth or a Kentucky bass or spotted bass? Well, a smallmouth is going to be darker, browner than a largemouth, those other fish. Largemouth and spotted bass are going to be your typical black bass, which is actually a sunfish. And they're going to have a green back and a white underbelly and then a strong lateral strike. But a smallmouth bass is more generally one color, except where its belly is going to be kind of a cream colored, but it's going to be bronze or brown, hence the nicknames bronzeback, brownie. They tend to have sometimes red eyes or orangish eyes, depending on their age. And there's some other characteristics about their fins and stuff like that. But generally you can tell by the color. Another way you can tell is just by the way they fight. Pound for pound, especially river smallmouth are the hardest fighting fish, one of the hardest fighting fish we have in Missouri. So they are very fun to catch, especially on light tackle. Even the small ones are fun to catch on light tackle. Now in Missouri, it's hard to grow large smallmouth bass. It's easier to grow them up north, Wisconsin, Minnesota, Canada, places like that. But here in Missouri, especially in the rivers, it's hard to grow them. It can take up to 10 years to grow a quality 18-inch fish. So you need to be careful with them when you catch them, and always, always, always practice catch and release for smallmouth bass. Practice CPR, which means catch, photo, and release. And there's no point in eating smallmouth bass. They are edible, but eat some other game fish that are much more tasty and abundant. So how do you not catch smallmouth bass? Well, you can catch them on natural bait, worms and crawdads, but I like to use artificial bait for the challenge of it. I use inline spinners like MEPS and rooster tails. They're killer on our Ozark streams. I also like to use any kind of crankbait, whether it's rattled or not, to mimic any kind of minnow. So like a Rapala, floating Rapala would be dynamite. But also any kind of crankbait that's going to act like a crawdad or crawfish. And of course, along those same lines, tube baits. A lot of people are using Ned rigs now. Any kind of bait or soft plastic that acts like a crawdad or some kind of crustacean is really going to work well. So, hey, go out and catch some smallmouth. It is fantastic fishing.